What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is week 6. Week 6 start sit video is here. Tough week 6, obviously. A ton of just an absolute deluge of injuries the last couple weeks. We also have a couple teams out on bye this week. Your teams are in a pretty rough spot. Looking across all of my teams, I feel the pain everywhere. You know, it just seems like everybody's had at least one or two key injuries. So if you're looking at your lineup this week and you're not feeling too great, it's okay. Everybody's not feeling super great. So let's get to some help this week. Help with your lineups. Help here in this video. As always, we're going to get it started here with a couple running back plays. And one this week that kind of stood out to me is like one of the most obvious RB2 plays that we can go like right back to after a down week is James Cook. Listen, I mean, obviously the Bills kind of had to abandon their run game in London. They got behind kind of quickly to Jacksonville and really couldn't get too much started until the second half of the game. And by then, they were just in throw-it mode. Cook had his worst game of the season. But listen, I mean, obviously this is one of the best spots he's going to get all season, not just like in the last couple of weeks. This is the spot for James Cook here to have a little bit of a ceiling. Giants are just in a really, really tough situation offensively. Their defense is starting to crumble too, and especially on run defense. This season, the Giants are allowing the fourth most yards per carry and the third highest rate of explosive runs. That's runs of 15 or more yards, according to FantasyPoints data. And, you know, if we take out scrambles, we take out all quarterback scrambles and just look at, you know, bulk rushing yards, only the Broncos are giving up more yards per game than the Giants here. So Cook, you know, the big question with him is, are they going to let him get goal line, you know, chances? Are they going to let him plunge into the end zone? They did a couple weeks ago, and I looked at the numbers the last 3 weeks. Cook has 7 snaps inside the 10-yard line compared to 4 for Latavius Murray and 1 for Damian Harris. So for me this week, I think Cook, like, you know, if he can't get it going here after a really bad week, this is the spot here for Cook. Again, this week is really tough. You're going to have a lot of really, really hard running back calls. It's going to be pretty gross. You're going to be deciding between maybe some of these Ravens running backs, maybe flexing in Tyjae Spears. There's a lot of grossness after the top 15 or so. I think James Cook is like the end of the really good RB2 pile. And then it's like Chuba Hubbard. I think you could make a case for him as being one of the better RB2s on the slate. But after that, like I said, after the top 15 or 16, man, it's tricky. And it kind of comes down to like what you need, right? Like, you know your team best, you know your league setting best. To me, this player is like kind of the pinnacle for that. Like Ramondre Stevenson, like I've been putting him as like a flex play in my start sit article all season. I don't think he's ever really been that strong of an RB2. The snap rate is really starting to come down. Ezekiel Elliott is really starting to get more involved here. And I think they're really just grasping at straws here, this Patriots team. They're just trying something to get the spark here. And I don't know if Ezekiel Elliott's the right choice for that. At this point in 2023, Zeke's had a great career, but you just look at the numbers. I mean, the Patriots have been trailing a lot. So, you know, we want Ramondre in on the field on those trailing snaps, getting dump offs, getting, the occasional carry while the Patriots are trying to get back in the game. Last couple weeks, man, I mean, Zeke has actually more expected fantasy points than Ramondre Stevenson. It's a direct split. Zeke just barely has a few more expected fantasy points than Stevenson when trailing over the last couple weeks. And Stevenson's like, he's a bellwether, man. It's like, you know, if the Patriots do get inside the 10, I think it'll be Stevenson probably getting the first crack at a goal line carry. But just everything else in between with this Patriots offense, between Mac Jones's collapse, just between the offense just having no explosive ability and really struggling up front. Like, you know, the run blocking is not great. Stevenson is really struggling. It's everything. Some of the parts here for the Patriots. Stevenson to me is like a really, really low ceiling play, right? Like, we really need him to get a goal line plunge. We really need the Patriots to get something going, and I have no confidence in that. It's impossible for any of us to. Stevenson is kind of like Najee Harris at this point. It's like, you know, if you get 8 points, it's like, man, that could maybe be okay for you if you're loaded elsewhere. But if you took Ramondre, it's been a struggle. And this week, you know, even in a good matchup against the Raiders, it's really hard clicking him into lineups. All right, we're going to switch gears over to some receiver plays. Receiver is a lot more fun this week than running back, that's for sure. I think that's kind of the theme of this show, guys, is like, if you get one thing out of it this week, and you're making decisions in your flex spot, and the decision is running back or receiver, I think this week you're most likely favoring the receiver. Going through rankings, I like 30 to 35 receivers this week, and I was just saying there's maybe 15 running backs I feel really comfortable about. So again, a lot of good receiver plays. We'll hit on 3 here that really stand out to me, kind of in that like wide receiver 2 to 3 pile range that you can kind of fluctuate up and down your rankings based on the matchup. And one to me this week that stands out again is Jacoby Myers. He's kind of been my guy this year. It's weird. Jacoby in the 3 games with Jimmy Garoppolo has kind of been Jimmy's guy. So I'm just following the numbers. I'm following the targets, and I'm following what we're seeing on the field. Garoppolo only has eyes for really 3 players in this offense. It's Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Josh Jacobs. It's awesome for fantasy. It's a very condensed passing target tree. It's everything we always want for fantasy football. Jacoby Myers has been great too. 39, 27%, and 32% of the targets in Jimmy Garoppolo's starts. Again, he has been a PPR stud with 9 catches, 7 catches, and 7 catches in all 3 of those games. I think you just keep going back to Jacoby Myers. The touchdowns aren't always going to be there. He scored 3 in 3 starts with Garoppolo, but the floor is great at this point. Just super high target volume. And in PPR leagues, man, we've got to be really happy with this floor. Jacoby Myers is like, you draft him in probably the 10th, 9th, 10th, 11th round. He's like basically Christian Kirk. And we're drafting Christian Kirk in the 4th and 5th round for fantasy. So great value, great on you if you drafted Jacoby. And this week against the Patriots, man, they play a lot of man coverage. This is a revenge game possibility for Jacoby as well after they signed Juju Smith-Schuster over him. If you go down Narrative Street, if you care for that, just a little more feather in the cap for Jacoby this week. One other receiver play I really, really like. Pour one out for our guy, Anthony Richardson. Fantasy points favorite. This one's tough. His shoulder injury is going to keep him out for at least 4 weeks. He's on IR. There's a possibility that this stretches out even longer. The Colts have a bye in week 11. That's 6 weeks away. They could just say, hey, man, we're going to shut you down until the bye, and then we'll come back, and, maybe we'll have a chance to make a run. AFC is really tight this year. I think the Colts are really just looking towards 2024, especially since this injury does seem so serious. But I got to say, Gardner Minshew is one of the best backups in the NFL. Good on the Colts for, being sharp and, Shane Steichen getting his guy back over from the Eagles and Gardner Minshew. And Minshew's not a fantasy stud. We're not putting him in lineups, but we do like him for these Colts receivers. Pittman has been funneled nearly 30% of the targets when Gardner Minshew has been on the field this year. Nearly 30%. He's at 29% target share. Only 5 receivers have a higher target share this season. This is a good spot too, man. Colts are 4.5 point underdogs. They're probably going to have to chase the game a little bit if the Jags finally hit a little bit of a ceiling offensively. Pittman has 7, 8, 9, 10 targets in his range of outcomes. I'm immediately putting him into lineups. After kind of a dry spell the last couple of weeks, I think this is an awesome spot for Pittman. The Jags are giving up the 5th most fantasy points and the 5th most fantasy yards per route run to outside wide receivers. So again, Pittman, just a great play this week. One final wide receiver that has kind of gotten off to a rough start, hasn't hit any big yardage totals this season, hasn't hit any big plays besides a couple in a game against the Lions that helped them win the game. Tyler Lockett actually leads the Seattle wide receiver group in expected fantasy points. That's based on his role, based on targets, also based on air yards, how far the ball is being thrown downfield. Tyler Lockett has the most valuable role through 4 games in this offense. And again, DK Metcalf did have a ribs injury, so there is that kind of layer of the onion here. But Tyler Lockett, once again, has a valuable role in this offense. Jackson Smith and Jigba, their new rookie wide receivers, kind of bringing everybody down a little bit here, which is kind of what we all expected. But still, Lockett this week has the best matchup. JSN is running most of his routes out of the slot, but Lockett's still mixing in there nearly 40% of the time. And the Bengals this season have given up 5 touchdowns to slot receivers. They've given up 0 to perimeter wide receivers, but 5 inside. It's a good spot for Tyler Lockett to finally hit kind of big score in a game. Bengals Seahawks, man, could really shoot out. I see this game both ways. This game could have 55, 60 points in its range of outcomes, or the Seahawks defense could be for real after shutting down the Giants. They've got Reek Woolen, they've got Devon Witherspoon back. Both those guys are healthy. So this could be kind of like a bellwether test for really both of those teams. But really, this game is really nice. Tyler Lockett, Again, really strong wide receiver 3 in flex play this week. I think this is a week for him to hit a ceiling here. Final 2 plays, kind of on the fringe of quarterback 1 and tight end 1 territory. Get going here with my favorite streamer of the week, Matthew Stafford. He's yet to hit a big ceiling game yet this season. He's finished no higher than quarterback 15 in weekly scoring, but no lower than QB 22. So he's been like a great super flex play for any of you guys that play in 2 quarterback leagues. I play in quite a few. I got Stafford in quite a few. It's been nice to have him as a QB2. He's been a really solid, dependable 15 to 19 points. I think this is the week we finally get him over like 20 to 22 because Rams have the 4th highest implied point total based on the over-under this week. Markets are expecting the Rams to have a big week offensively, and that means to me, Stafford should have a really good week offensively. The Cardinals have allowed the 6th most passing yards per game through 5 weeks so far, and they've allowed a top 12 fantasy score to 4 of 5 quarterbacks so far. So if there's ever a week where Stafford is going to hit like 22, 23, 24 points and give you a total that's not like comparable to what Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen give you, but like, within 4 to 6 points, this is the week. Stafford's a really, really strong streamer. And again, if you've been playing in Superflex, don't ever take him out of your lineup because he's been super, super consistent for you. On the tight end side of the things, look, it's a hellscape out there. Everybody is struggling to find a decent tight end. Once again, I think Jake Ferguson was a guy that I was targeting in a lot of my teams super late in like the absolute last round of drafts. I drafted him in a ton of spots. I think this is a really good week for him to stream this week. Ferguson in week 2, I was kind of starting to get concerned. He got down to like a 40% route share. I was like, oh man, this is going to be a tight end by committee. They're going to get, Peyton Hendershot in there. They got to get Luke Shoemaker in there. Unfortunately, we've had some injuries here, and Ferguson's role has really come up, either through injury or through really strong play. Ferguson's been really good this season. Last 4 weeks, his route share has gone from 40% all the way up to 73%, a season high last week. And that's full-time, really strong usage for tight ends these days. Anytime a tight end runs more than like 70-ish% of the routes, we can consider them a borderline full-time player because most teams have a rotation. But here, Ferguson's getting a ton of targets. Now that he's getting more routes, he's getting more opportunity within the offense. It's great. Ferguson leads the team in targets per route run over Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb. And he's actually tied with Sam Laporta with 0.26 targets per route run. That's the second most among tight ends, trailing only Travis Kelce, who's in another universe in terms of targets per route run at 0.36. But again, Ferguson back in tight end 1, but I think this is a week for him to hit a little bit of a ceiling after last week. Cowboys obviously got demolished against the 49ers. We're hoping that they can play in a finally like normal back and forth football game against the Chargers. I like that game quite a bit, have quite a bit of fantasy appeal, and Jake Ferguson is a big part of that on the Cowboys side. Guys, thanks so much, as always, for listening, hanging out, week 6, start sit. As always, I am in our Discord answering all of your questions. I've answered every single one this season. If you're a FantasyPoints subscriber, hit me up in our Discord. I'll get to your question, no matter how big or small you think it is. I really do appreciate you guys checking this video out. If you will, please drop us a like, subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. I really, really appreciate it. Until next week, good luck, win all your matchups. Have a great week 6, everybody. We'll see you next time.